This is why you should avoid mixing Barbie with biased AI image generators. What does a typical prisoner look like? What about a lawyer, a nurse, a drug dealer? What about a fast food worker, a cleaner, a terrorist, or a CEO? These are all images created by an artificial intelligence image generator called MidJourney, which creates unique images based off of simple word prompts. These AI image generators have exploded in popularity thanks to their impressive results and ease of use. Within a few years, as much as 90% of the images on the internet could be artificially generated. Given that generative AI will have a huge impact in shaping our visual landscape, it's important to understand that the reality it presents can often be distorted, where harmful biases relating to gender, race, age, and skin colour can be more exaggerated and more extreme than in the real world. Leonardo Nicoletti and Dina Bass at Bloomberg Technology generated and analysed more than 5,000 images created by stable Diffusion. They prompted it to generate portraits of workers in different professions and sorted the images according to skin tone and perceived gender. They found that higher paying professions like CEO, lawyer, and politician were dominated by lighter skin tones, while subjects with darker skin tones were more commonly associated with lower income jobs like dishwasher, janitor, and fast food worker. A similar story emerged when categorising by gender, with higher income jobs such as doctors, CEOs, and engineers being predominantly represented by men, whilst professions like cashier, social worker, and housekeeper were mostly represented by women. These racial and gender biases were found to be stronger than the reality of what was recorded in the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. For instance, women make up 39% of doctors in the US, but only appeared in 7% of the images. These exaggerated biases that AI systems create are known as representational harms. These are harms which degrade certain social groups by reinforcing the status quo or by amplifying stereotypes. A particularly extreme example was created when Buzzfeed published an article of AI-generated Barbies from different countries around the world. The Barbies from Latin America were all presented as fair-skinned, perpetuating a form of discrimination known as colorism, where lighter skin tones are favoured over darker ones. The Barbie from Germany was dressed in clothes reminiscent of an SS Nazi uniform, and the Barbie from South Sudan was depicted holding a rifle by her side. How are these biases created? First, we need to understand how AI image generators work. One of the most popular and powerful models are called Generative Adversarial Networks, or GAN for short. They have two parts: the generator, which acts like a forger that makes fake images and tries to pass them off as real, and the discriminator, which acts like a detective, trying to figure out if the generator's images are real or fake. The discriminator has been trained on datasets of lots of real images, so it has an idea of what to look out for. When it identifies a fake image, it tells the generator where it went wrong. The generator then tries again to fool the discriminator. They both play this game over and over and over again, trying to compete against each other, until eventually, the generator gets really good at fooling the discriminator. A feature common amongst all AI image generators is that the quality of the outputs will depend on the quality of the datasets, the millions of labelled images that the AI has been trained on. If there are biases in the dataset, the AI will acquire and replicate those biases. But there is no such thing as a neutral dataset. As Melissa Terrace puts it, all data is historical data, the product of a time, place, political, economic, technical, and social climate. If you are not considering why your data exists and other datasets don't, you are doing data science wrong. The bigger problem is not that AI systems simply reflect back the prejudice baked into their datasets. It's that in many instances, they fuel and exacerbate these biases through feedback loops. For AI image generators trained on biased datasets, they will fill the internet with biased images, which will then be fed back into datasets for other AI image generators, that will then create even more biased images, and so on and so forth, thus creating a vicious feedback loop which will both spread and intensify existing biases. So, how do we stop this from happening? Resolving the problem goes beyond a technical question of simply using better, more representative datasets. To reduce bias, one has to tackle deeper philosophical questions, which look at how you define bias and fairness in the first place. Take the example of gender disparity when it comes to generating an image of a Fortune 500 CEO. What should a fair gender split look like? Should it accurately reflect the current statistics, which are roughly 9-1? In one sense, this can be seen as a fair representation of reality, but others might see this as unfair for perpetuating unequal and unjust power structures and for discouraging women from applying for C-suite roles. Perhaps the distribution should be a 50-50 split. This would achieve demographic parity as it matches the gender split of the population. We could consider applying this across all jobs and roles, but this assumes that there are no intrinsic differences between genders. Would it be fair to depict prisoners at a 50-50 split, for example, when men currently make up 93% of the global prison population? Perhaps the only fair distribution is to make the output completely random. But even then, defining the gender category with a binary value has already introduced bias into the system. Clearly, there are no easy answers. The difficulty in defining what a fair process or outcome actually is has led to many AI ethics initiatives being guided by high-minded but ultimately vacuous principles like do the right thing. These sorts of principles have been criticised as virtue signalling, which haven't led to much in the way of tangible, action-guiding recommendations. If self-governance by tech companies is not enough to mitigate AI harms, we might look to governments to pass laws and regulations. Ultimately, they are the only institutions that can hold companies to account for their harms on society and force them to act. To redress representational harms caused by generative AI, lawmakers could establish oversight bodies to deal with complaints over biased images. Tech companies could be forced to update their algorithms or retrain their AI on better datasets. Regulators could also impose standards on the quality of training datasets, requiring them to be transparent, diverse, and more representative. But whatever laws and regulations are put in place, their timing will be crucial. The Collingridge Dilemma, named after the sociologist David Collingridge, highlights the difficulty in regulating dynamic technologies like generative AI, whose full effects and consequences are only understood as time goes on. If lawmakers legislate too early, they may come up with ineffective and irrelevant policies, leading to a loss of legitimacy amongst the public and feeding perceptions of out-of-touch bureaucrats dealing with technologies they don't understand.
Mr. Chu, does TikTok access the home Wi-Fi network?
Only if the user turns on the Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, I may not understand the...
So if I have TikTok app on my phone and my phone is on my home Wi-Fi network, does TikTok access that network?
However, if lawmakers wait too long to understand a technology's impacts and harms, by the time they act, it may be too late for them to control. The technology will have been widely adopted and now be too deeply integrated into people's lives for meaningful change to happen. So, has Pandora's box already been opened? Or can we guide generative AI towards a path that better serves our needs and build a fairer society in the process? As computer scientist and digital activist Joy Balamwini puts it, whether AI will help us reach our aspirations or reinforce unjust inequalities is ultimately up to us. At LIS, the London Interdisciplinary School, we believe that solutions to the world's most complex problems won't come from a single specialism or discipline. We need to bring together experts and knowledge from across the arts, sciences, and humanities. If you're interested in connecting the dots, explore our bachelor's and master's degrees, as well as our professional short courses at lis.ac.uk.